So a lot of who we identify with is formed around the environment that we have grown up in. So the family environment. And there's numerous parts of that family environment. Might be the religion of the family, whatever religion the family follows, if they happen to follow one. What the culture is of the family. You know, where in the world has the family come from? A large majority of people in this country of Australia and also New Zealand as well have immigrated to that country, as with America as well. So we might have, up to 6 or 7 generations in our family, but even before that, where do those pioneers come from to reach this land? So there's this identity that grows from the day we enter, and it's all about our environment which is shaping it, and we do that for our survival as well. Our connection to our primary caregivers also very important. Because they're the ones that are bringing us food and keeping us safe and bringing us shelter. So we quickly learn to conform, and we will take on the moods and nuances of the parents as well, and sort of learn when to speak, when not to speak, and we're feeling our interaction with our parents. We're using all our sensory to connect and make sense of the world. It shapes us pretty quickly. That's how we learn to survive. And so we can have this false sense of what love is and what connection is, and this false sense of belonging, the feeling connection, because we give quite a lot away to get that. So these external forces are shaping us from the moment we take our first breath. Family, then we go to school, and we get shaped by the school, and depending on the system that it's under. There's cultural parts of us as well, our grandparents and their beliefs, and our parents and their beliefs, and how they were shaped by their parents, and back through those generations, how each generation was shaped by their family system, but also their environment. A lot of those older people went through pretty tough eras of war. World War I, World War II, some Korea, others have gone to Vietnam, and these things have really shaped the family lineage too. Men coming, or women as well, but predominantly men coming back from wars, broken and busted up, and not having anywhere to share it or shift and share what they've seen and the atrocities that they've taken in, the impact on the humans. They might turn to alcohol and drugs, and out of that comes violence and abuse. They're the very ones that they love, but they've just got all this turmoil, all this inner turmoil from what they've seen. So that can flow through into families, and it can come out as abuse. That trauma can be transferred. The trauma of what those men and women too saw at war. And while the men were away, the women were holding the fort. They were keeping the family system going, so they played the role of mother and father in many circumstances, and trying to keep the family safe, which is why the men went off to war in the first place, to try and keep the family safe. It wasn't so much about fighting the king and country. There was a sense of adventure for those young men, for sure, but primarily it was about keeping their family safe and doing the right thing by the family for the survival of the family. And off to school we go. We get shaped by the schooling system, by the teachers, and however their experiences of life have been, they can come out in their teaching style as well. Some of the old schooling was pretty tough. I went to an all boys boarding school, and some of that was pretty tough stuff, but we learned to survive in that environment, probably dished out as much as I got in many circumstances as well. And it was the schooling environment. And then the community environment, whether I had that village to raise me as a child, which luckily for me I did. I was very fortunate in that, as I now am discovering more and more. I thought was just an everyday event for every child is certainly not. The blessing of having a farm, family farm that had been there for a number of generations, and my mother's parents, 6 generations of family were stone fruit orchards, so a lot of connection to the earth and to the land. So I did have the blessings of a lot of nature around me in my upbringing. And then we go off into the world and experiences of the workplace and dealing with more people and taking on different interactions from others. And then the overarching political governing body of the country we happen to live in as well. There's some people that's meant they've had to escape, or their ancestors have had to escape, their generation or their grandparents have had to escape from war-torn countries, or economically depressed countries, and looking for something more for their family, and shifted, left their country of origin. So there's a mourning in that too for many people, leaving that, having to leave that behind, not so much the country but the culture, all those special things that belong to those countries, particularly some of those deeply rooted places in Europe. They have quite a strong culture attached. And going to the other side of the world and taking that, and the influence that has on the next generations and the next generations, your grandparents. So there's a lot goes on from external forces that shapes who we are, and we're taking that in like this big download, like this supercomputer, this little child, and it forms the basis of our identity. Our identity is shaped by our environment, and our child environment then grows into the adolescent, where we're trying to interact with other beings and kind of learning to be a little bit more independent, dealing with other young teenage people, trying to navigate that world. And often this environmental identity that we've taken on shows up in our adult relationships as well. How we react, how we respond, how we're often triggered by something that someone may do that we think it's something they've done, but often it traces back to something that we've experienced in the past. It brings up an old trauma, an old experience from their past. So essentially it is external forces that have shaped us. And then that goes in as well. We have this internal identity, like the little voice of judgment sitting on the shoulder, reminding you, and it's usually the voice of a parent or someone that is whispering in your ear. So it can form a lot of fear, and it can be shame and blame and guilt that we build up around from that voice of judgment, from some things that have happened in our outer environment. Because we take them in and we often take responsibility for things that may have had nothing to do with us. We'll take on the blame. And then in the really extreme cases where people have suffered from abuse, whether that's physical or sexual or emotional abuse, it can really have a deep impact. It's very traumatic. And that can create all sorts of internal complications. And those will often show up as external symptoms as well, or physical symptoms in the physical body, because those traumatic events get locked in the system. They get locked in the body and they get locked in the mind. It's this imprint of traumatic events and traumatic experiences that stays locked. So it's that, the fight, freeze sort of aspect of how trauma is. And if we get caught in that freeze or that fright part of it, that energy can get locked in our physical system. So this work we're doing with Jenny Home to Soul and through root cause rapid core healing is about releasing that energy from those old traumas, and unlocking that and expressing it so it's released in a healthy, safe way. And it's like this magical release of something that maybe we didn't even know was sitting there, but it's had a big influence on how we react and how we respond to the others around us and how the world around us as well. And it can shape our personality. But it's about unlocking that energetic imprint, releasing and expressing and releasing that energy from it. So we can then form a whole new internal view of ourselves, and we can reclaim what was given away. As I was saying, for people that have had a lot of abuse, we can often give away their childhood, and their innocence can be taken away. It's like sexual and physical abuse. So it can be quite a hard road. And we can free that up. Not only survive, but recover from, by letting that energetic imprint be released and be expressed in a very safe, caring, nurturing environment. So that's the fundamental part of releasing all that false identity that we've taken on, and then reclaiming and reconnecting to who we truly are, who we are at our core and essence, how we come in, what we come in with. And so we have a look at who am I without all those labels and conditioning and the beliefs. And we have a look at the timeline and release the energy of those traumatic events, those moments in life. And we might discover there's a pattern in our timeline as well. And, when we trace it back, for me, there's been a lot of grief and loss. And it's not only human being life that I've had grief and loss around. There's been, property and work and things like that in there too. The identity of the role I had, the identity I had in my workplace, who I thought I was, the label that I went under. Family release, divorce, and the grief and the loss in that space as well. As I was saying, it can be property and houses and work. It's a lot of areas that we don't consider that we're grieving, that they are quite a traumatic loss. So that's the beauty of the timeline. We're sort of unraveling and untangling all these hidden things, and there'll be themes that come up quite often. Some of them might be betrayal, the system as well. So then we go on and we move forward to reclaim our old identity, take back what we lost, and reclaim to that. And we view ourselves looking at our personal astrology and what lies in there, the gold that lies in there, this astrology blueprint that we came in with. The position of our zodiac chart, our unique blueprint. So we're coming back to more of who we are, or who we were in the first place, and it gives us a sense of why we're here. Why am I here? What's my purpose? So we can unravel that and start to discover more and more of that. And we can start to let go of our analytical thinking and trusting everything we think is gospel, the thoughts and the chatter, releasing some of that and reconnecting to our feeling body. I think a lot of us women, have learned to shut down a lot of our feelings to try and keep ourselves safe. But what we have really done in that is forgotten that our feelings are an amazing guidance. An amazing way to navigate, like our internal compass. Our intuition, for example, is a very feeling based. So not only have we shut down to keep the the scary stuff out, we also shut down the good stuff and our access to our deeper inner knowledge, our deeper inner knowing, because we need our feeling to understand and connect to that. So we learn to reconnect to our feeling base. And then we can reclaim our identity and follow our true path, bring the gifts that we're here to bring, and share our essence of who we are. So it's a deep dive. It's a deep dive of unraveling all these false identities. It's a beautiful journey, and it's an individual journey within the group, because we all have a different journey within that we're supporting each other, because we can relate quite often to someone else's story and their journey, and opens up deep levels of compassion and kindness to one another as well, because every single human being on this planet has walked the path and have stories and wounds that they're carrying. And that's what shows up in how we react and how we respond and how we relate to others. So a beautiful journey, and really look forward to having you on board, stripping away all that dross and all those untangling and unraveling, all what you've taken on, releasing those energetic imprints and reconnecting through our astrological blueprint, really looking then, who am I now? Released all that external environmental influence